Welcome to a Tabletop Sportcast video presentation. I'm going to be using this series to showcase different tools that I use to track my tabletop gaming experience, to help with stat collection, or even just to help me with the project management overall. So, for today's episode, I'm going to showcase the gaming log. And this is a tool that I started using a couple of years ago when I was really starting to ramp up my project delivery and bring those agile concepts in. And I felt like I needed a good tool to be able to keep that historical record and to help me with understanding what my gaming activity habits were, and eventually knew that if I got the data, I'd be able to build a basic dashboard to help me for a quick reference guide. That's what this gaming log was designed to do. So let's dig in and talk a little bit about the gaming log. This is the basic setup of the gaming log. You can see I've got 6 columns. It starts with the session number, the date the session was completed, what game I played, if it was included in a project, and there's times where I might default to something like exhibition if I'm just playing with a game and not really tying it directly to a project. I also have the event, which is what individual event I did during that project, and then some basic notes. The notes it really varies depending on the project. You can see, for instance, some of the examples here. With my 2019 Mets replay, I was actually tracking like what number game of the season I was in, what was the result, and what was the total record for the Mets. There's times where I might have, like it did with this college football championship, maybe some individual performance information. And other than that, it might be just some different information here. Richmond at Charlotte in the HMB Owners Choice League. Koufax barely outduels Gibson, and Rice's homer is the difference. Things like that. That's the kind of information that I can track there in the notes. All of the information you see, except for the session number, is entered by hand. So I just enter this information in, and this becomes basically like a written log. The session number is the only place on this tab where I'm using a formula. It's a basic counting formula where I add 1 to the previous value, and every one of these is doing that. Other than that, I've set this to be conditionally formatted. Alternating colors. So this allows you to set it up where your header is one color, and then you alternate the colors of the lines. You can see here, white, light blue, white follows this idea here. What that allows me to do is just make it easier to read the information across the screen. That's all that happens on this tab. Oh, except for one more thing, which I'll scroll down here towards the bottom. This little yellow spot, this is for my podcast, and gives me a quick reference as to where did I last discuss a game in the tabletop recap. So when I go in to do the next episode, I know where to start from. I start right below that and cover all the games below that line for the next episode. Okay, so now I've got the record of all the games that I've played. I will point out, too, as you look at some of the information here, not every session is equal. There are times where a session is going to be one game, and it all depends for me on like how much time I spend in that particular game. Sometimes, like with Hoops Madness, for instance, I usually capture 2 games at one time in a session because it's a fairly quick game to play. I also have some games like History Maker Baseball Express where I might play an entire series in a single gaming session. Again, if I can complete a 4-game series under 45 minutes, that feels like one session. I even have games such as if I come up to like Fury Hardball. Fury Hardball, I will typically play a whole bunch of games. And, I'll do a Control F here. So let's do Fury Hardball. And that comes in here. So now we can come down and, as I started getting in, you can see here, and when I did my 2020 tournament, I was playing about 7 games in each session. It's a really quick game. So, maybe 5 minutes, 6 minutes per game. It's easier to capture it that way. So I would play a bunch of games in one session. So not all sessions are equal, but they are generated to be somewhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours for the most part. Okay, so that's your table. That's the basic information that we're capturing for the gaming log. This next tab is where I get to more of the dashboard information. So here, I use a few formula-driven fields. So first is going to be a really great formula to use in Google Sheets, which is unique. What this does is it returns a unique list of entries from a particular column. In this case, column C of the gaming log, which is what game am I playing? So now I've got a unique list of all the games that I play. And you can see on this list, I've got a total of 46 games that I play. Some of these are highlighted in red, and that means that in some cases, like I don't actually own the game. I may have had a chance to play it during a demo session with someone. Or in a case like Status Pro Basketball, I've just kind of retired it for the time being because I'm not really playing it. And in the case of Status Pro Basketball, it's been replaced by Highlight Maker Hoops, which is also called out here. In one of the Play.cons, I think last year, I had a chance to play like the working version of Highlight Maker Hoops, and at that time it was called History Maker Hoops Express. They changed the name, made it the first game that was released. So now I capture those sessions down here. I still have that on my historical record. All right. That's the first piece here. The next one is a counting formula that's a count if, and it says if that same column C has this value, count how many times you see that happening. Well, in this particular case, I've played 330 gaming sessions of History Maker Baseball. Next highest for me is Fast Drive Football with 130 sessions. So there's that. I then have a since formula in here, and this is a little more complex formula. First, it takes today's date, and then it looks for the maximum value in column B from the gaming log tab, which is my date. What's the highest date you see when column C equals this value? So what this is doing is it's saying, okay, the highest value I see for History Maker Baseball, and if I scroll down here, that's going to be towards the bottom of my list. History Maker Baseball looks like it's right about here. 9/8. So it says, okay, if I take that date and subtract it from today's date, how many days has it been? 13 days. This gives me a quick reference of how often is this, or when was this game last played on my tabletop. And then I use conditional formatting to set the color within that column. If it's 30 days or less, make it green. If it's between 31 and 90 days, make it yellow. And if it's greater than 91 days, or equal to or greater than 91 days, make it red. And now I get this quick reference by scanning down to see how long has it been since a game has been played. Now, recently on my podcast, I mentioned that I was in the green with 23 games. But what happened was I recently completed my Extra Life Marathon. And I'll scroll up here. You can see here, there's a bunch of games that took place during that marathon. Global Gladiator Games, Bull Ride Hero, HMB Home Run Derby. Well, on my tab here, I can see that Global Gladiator Games is now at 32 days. Same with Bull Ride Hero. Same with Home Run Derby. Those games all shifted from the green to the yellow. And this is another dashboard view. So I get an overall picture of how is my catalog of games being treated on the tabletop. Pretty balanced right now, where 15 are green, 15 are yellow, and 16 are red. Okay. I usually like to try to keep the green as high as I can. I like to keep the red lower. The yellow is something I try to manage a little bit. So right now, pretty good shape. I mean, 15 games played in the last 30 days. That's pretty solid. I can live with that. Next piece of this is talking more recently. So this column now is my 2022. And it's saying now it's a count if S, which means I want you to look at multiple variables. Not only do I want to see that the gaming log game column has this value, but I also want you to check to see if column A on that tab is greater than 745. Why 745? Well, if I go to my gaming log, column A is my session number. And if I scroll down here to 745, that's a significant date because that was when I played on December 30th. The next gaming session after that was in 2022. So now I've got a count of everything I'm doing for this year only, this calendar year only. And on that case, I can see, okay, History Maker Baseball, 64 sessions. Same as Fast Drive Football. This was done very much early in the year. This one more consistently throughout the year. And then the next highest total is Highlight Maker Hoops with 54 sessions. That gives me an idea. All right, these are my top 3 games for this year. That count also helps understand this dashboard function, which is count how many of those values are greater than 0. In other words, how many games did I play this year? I have played 41 of these 46 games this year. And all told, count how many, and that's a sum formula, sum up the total number of values here. So how many sessions total for this year? 437. Next, I say, this is more from my podcast than the actual tabletop, but how many of these did I actually do a dedicated episode to on my podcast? So if it has a check mark, I did a dedicated episode about it. The gray items are my non-sports games that I'm not going to feature on my podcast. And then red items are games that aren't really in my collection, so I'm not going to do an episode on those. So you can see there's still a lot of opportunities for me to do a dedicated episode for a particular game. And then lastly, I've got a project list, again, using that unique formula. And the count formula here is specific to specific rows, which is really to say how many of these are been played this year. I can scroll down here, and most of my more popular projects are going to be towards the bottom of the list. And in fact, the highest by a long shot, the 1990 season replay, which was my Fast Drive Football. And then the next highest are down here, Krista Cannon Carter. This was my career campaign guide using Legends of Boxing. We've got the Tom Seaver Mets What If and Hoops Madness. There it is. There's my quick list of like top games for the year. So now I've got all this information on the first tab. The second tab gives me more of that dashboard view. And I use this a lot. Uh, Obviously, I talked about how I can use it for my podcast, but I've also used this like anytime I'm kind of stuck, like what do I want to play tonight? And if I look at my project plan and I'm not really feeling any of the projects that night, I can come here and say, okay, well, what needs to get back on the table because it's getting a little stale, collecting dust on the shelf. I'll look at my yellow and my red and try to find a title that I feel like playing that night. And usually I'll say, okay, great. You know what? It's been a long time for Aviatrix 37. Let's get that back on the tabletop. And then that's what I'll do. I'll kind of use that to help kind of guide my decision making. That's all of this. Now, it's a very rough look. It's not a really cleaned up dashboard view. What if I wanted to clean it up? What if I wanted to get to a more polished, finished product for this gaming log? There's another great tool that Google uses, and I'm not going to go into how to set it up necessarily, but I wanted to showcase it to you a little bit, and that is Google Data Studio. So now this is a dashboard I built in Google Data Studio for the gaming log, and it brings in all the information that I had on that same spreadsheet we just looked at. So if I set this up, and we're going to reset this so that it's all the way back here to normal, you can see a lot of the same information we shared from the spreadsheet. 46 games, 1,182 gaming sessions, which will be showcased right here at the bottom of my list. There it is. And 135 different projects over the past couple of years. It also provides me a list starting with the most recent events that I've played. Now, if I want to, I can use these drop downs here to get more specific. So here I am, I'm going to say, okay, you know what? Let's look specifically at a recent game that I've been playing. Let's look at Dice United. And that should be in here. So here's Dice United. Just picked this game up, talked about it recently. Here it is. One game, Dice United, 4 different sessions using one project because I jumped right into a project with this particular game. It's my Heart of Midlothian replay, and here's the 4 gaming sessions, which actually are 2 sessions each. 2 games per session, I should say. So now I've got it. There's my quick reference for Dice United. We'll reset this, and let's say I wanted to look more specifically at a project. We talked a little bit about the career campaign guide for Chris the Cannon Carter. Here it is. Here's my recent list. It's showcasing 25 on the list, but I can go to the next one by just scrolling over. And now I've got a record of all the fights for Chris the Cannon Carter and what his outcomes were. 30 sessions, 1 game, 1 project. I can also use this to get to a specific date range. So let's say I wanted to look just at this past month. I can do it in a couple of ways here. I can say, okay, I want to look at September. And here it is. Here's my listing for September. I have all the gaming sessions, 1 more on this tab here because it's actually 26 total. And 11 different games this month, 26 sessions, 12 different projects. So right there, I can see that there's 1 game that I played 2 different projects with, and I'm pretty sure it's Soccer Blast. So I'm going to look at this modified list. You can see this has been shortened now because it only includes the ones that are in this filter. And I'm going to say, okay, let's look at Soccer Blast. Nope, only 1 there. So I wonder which one had 2 projects then. It might be Highlight Maker Hoops. Nope. Yeah, interesting. History Maker Baseball Express. That's the one. There it is. 1969 NL Replay and my 1961 Continental League, as I've been kind of going back and forth trying to figure out which one's going to be the project I go with. So some really good information there. I can also do some other stuff with the dates. I can, instead of using specific date ranges, a fixed date range, I can also come up and say, what about like the last 30 days? Here it is: 11 games, 26 sessions, 12 projects. You'll remember that when I go to my data tab, now this says 15 games played in the last 30 days. And this is going to give me like 11 different games that have been played in that time frame. What's the difference? Sport versus non-sport games, probably, right? So yeah, there we go. We've got 26 sessions, 11 different games that have made it to the tabletop here. And I can also use this to look at my year to date. So that should be down here a little bit further. Let's go this year to date, hit the apply. And now what we're going to see is some of the same numbers we had on our dashboard. 41 games, 437 sessions. That's these two numbers right here. So just a nice, clean look at presenting the same information. That's Google Data Studio. It's a really great way to have a finished look to your gaming log. All right. That's it for today. Here's a gaming log. I think it's really useful. It's been helpful for me to just track what I'm doing in my sessions. If you want, reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about it. You can hit me up on my email, tabletopsportcast@gmail.com. I'm going to try to showcase some other tools that I use, and this series is going to really supplement the podcast, because things like this are really hard to talk about on the podcast. But check out the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. I talk more about project planning and my gaming experiences and the games that I play. This is going to be for some of those visual elements, and this is a great tool to use for tracking your gaming habits. All right. Hit the subscribe button and you'll be able to keep track of as I post new videos. And if you hit the like button, it'll just help kind of increase awareness of the YouTube channel. Appreciate it. And we'll be back soon with another video.